Picture this. Somewhere in a hospital break room in the UK, a Filipino nurse is sitting alone after a long shift, phone propped against a coffee cup, watching a tennis match she should be too tired to care about. Her shift ended hours ago. She is not going home yet. And the player she is watching, 21 years old, ranked outside the top 25 just a few months ago, is somehow the reason half her group chat has been awake since dawn. That player is Alex Eala, and to understand why a nurse in another hemisphere is staring at her phone instead of sleeping, you have to go back to where this season actually started, because it did not start at Wimbledon.
It started on the practice courts of Quezon City, where Eala grew up, the kind of place that does not produce Grand Slam tennis players, because the infrastructure for that simply does not exist in the Philippines the way it does in Europe or the United States. She left home young to chase a sport her country had never really had a foothold in. For years, that chase produced flashes, not headlines. A good run here, a tough first-round exit there. The kind of career that gets quietly tracked by people back home and barely registers anywhere else. Then came this grass season. In early June, Eala won the WTA 125 title in Birmingham, her second title at that level. It was a solid result, the kind that moves a ranking a few spots and gets a short write-up. Nobody was treating it as the start of anything historic yet, but it put her on a 9-2 record on grass for the year, and grass, it turns out, suits her game in a way hard courts never quite have. The slice off her left hand sits low and skids away from opponents. The points end faster. The margins tighten in her favor.
A week later, she walked into the Berlin Open, a WTA 500 event, the kind of tournament where the seeds are real and the depth is unforgiving, and she beat Elena Rybakina, world number 2, not an aging former top player limping through a bad season, but a genuine Grand Slam champion on a surface that has historically been her best. Sit with that for a second. A 21-year-old without a single tour-level title to her name walked through one of the most dangerous servers in the sport on the way to a semi-final. She did not win the title. She lost that semi-final to Linda Noskova, who went on to beat Jessica Pegula in the final and crack the top 10 for the first time in her career. That loss matters, because this is not a story that needs exaggeration to work. Eala did not need to win Berlin. She needed to prove she belonged in that draw at all, against that level of competition, on a surface where margins are razor thin. And she did that. Here is what nobody was quite saying out loud yet, the question sitting underneath all of it. What happens when the rankings actually catch up to what people were starting to feel?
On June 22nd, the WTA rankings dropped. Eala jumped 5 spots in a single week, from number 35 to number 30. 5 spots in 1 week, off the back of beating a Grand Slam champion. That is not a gift. That is earned. And world number 30 put her on the edge of something that had never happened in the history of Philippine tennis, a seed at a Grand Slam. Then, almost as an afterthought, the second piece fell into place. Victoria Mboko, the Canadian world number 9, withdrew from Wimbledon with a left knee injury picked up playing doubles at Queen's. One withdrawal, and Eala moved from a projected number 30 to the official 29th seed. 29, inside the top 32, officially, structurally, on paper, seeded. Think about what that actually means. A seed is not a vanity number. It is the tournament itself building a player a path, guaranteeing she will not face the other best players in the world until the later rounds. It is recognition that does not come from a press release or a marketing department. It comes from results. Full stop. And for the first time ever, that recognition had a Filipino name attached to it. She became the first Southeast Asian player to earn a single seed at a major since a Thai player did it back in 2009, and the first Filipino full stop in the entire history of the sport.
When that draw was confirmed, Eala herself, in that understated way she has of talking, said it touches close to home for her, this particular tournament, this particular achievement. She was not performing for cameras. She has spent years building toward a moment like this in relative obscurity, and now
It was simply, finally, real. And this is where the story stops being about one player and starts being about something much bigger. Because the Philippines has roughly 13 million people living and working overseas. Nurses, seafarers, domestic workers, engineers, students, scattered across 6 continents, building lives far from the place that raised them. Ask anyone who has lived that kind of distance what it costs, and they will tell you it is not really about the money or the time zone difference. It is about the quiet absence of something that feels like home, something that says you are not invisible here. You belong somewhere, even when you are 8,000 miles from where you grew up.
That is the gap Eala's rise has been filling, without anyone designing it to. Former players covering the tour have noted, almost in passing, that wherever she plays, the crowds swell beyond what her ranking alone would predict. Tennis writers who have followed her career for years have called her, by certain measures, arguably the most followed player in the sport among a fan base that operates on something closer to identity than fandom. Nobody built that with a marketing plan. It built itself. One shared match, one group chat, one person telling another person to watch. Because when she succeeds, it does not feel like watching a stranger. It feels personal. Now think about what it actually costs someone to act on that feeling. A nurse working night shifts does not casually request time off. A seafarer does not casually plan shore leave around a tournament draw. These are real decisions, made with real constraints, against real schedules that do not bend easily. When people make that kind of effort to be near a moment, even just through a screen, it is not casual interest. It is belief, paid for in sleep and shift swaps and money that could have gone somewhere else. That belief is about to be tested on the biggest stage that exists in tennis. Wimbledon begins June 29th and runs through July 12th, and Eala walks in not as a wild card story or a feel-good underdog narrative, but as a structurally protected, officially recognized 29th seed, guaranteed to avoid the other top players until the 3rd round. Last year, she went out in the 1st round here, beaten in 3 sets by Barbora Krejcikova. That memory is not a footnote. It is fuel. She has spent a full year turning an early exit at her favorite tournament into a reason to come back better. And the version of her walking onto the grass this time has a Berlin upset over a Grand Slam champion sitting in her recent memory. Her guaranteed earnings already tell part of the story. Just by stepping onto the court for round 1 in singles and doubles, she has assured more than 80,000 pounds, translated back home into millions of pesos. Money that means something very different in the Philippines than it does on a tour where players routinely earn that in a single afternoon elsewhere. But money was never really the headline here. The headline is that a path now exists, officially, on paper, in the draw sheet, for a deep run that has never been attempted by anyone from her country before. So picture that nurse again, the one in the break room, phone in hand. She is not watching because Eala has already proven something undeniable in straight sets on center court. She is watching because Eala might. Because somewhere underneath the rankings and the seed numbers and the prize money breakdowns is a much simpler, much older feeling, the one that has nothing to do with tennis and everything to do with watching someone who looks like you, who comes from where you come from, stand on a stage that has never had room for either of you before.
The draw is set. The seed is real. The grass is freshly cut in London, and a 21-year-old from Quezon City is about to walk out onto it, carrying more than her own ambitions on her shoulders. Somewhere in that break room, in living rooms in Dubai, on a ship somewhere in open water, on phones in Edinburgh and Melbourne and Rome, millions of people are about to watch the same first serve, holding the exact same breath. And whatever happens in that match, one thing has already changed permanently. There is now a number on a Grand Slam seeding sheet that did not exist a year ago, sitting next to a name that, until this June, the history of the sport had never made room for. That part, win or lose, nobody can take back.